You're listening to Advice from Your Advocates, a show where we provide elder law advice to professionals who work with the elderly and their families.
Welcome back to Advice from Your Advocates. I'm Bob Mannor. I'm a certified elder law attorney in Michigan, and I've been looking forward to this podcast. This is going to be a really interesting one. So we've got Carrie Aalberts. She's an educator and advocate for dementia issues, and she has a really interesting social media presence and website called Dementia Darling. So Carrie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here and talk.
So tell us about that, the work that you do through dementiadarling.com.
Yeah, I have been on social media under the persona Dementia Darling for almost 5 years. In October, it'll be 5 years. And I wanted to create a safe place for dementia caregivers. Of course, all caregivers are welcome, but I specifically work with dementia caregivers. And I consistently in my journey found that dementia caregivers felt very isolated, and I wanted to have a place that was a safe place for them to feel seen, to find resources, and truly to give them a virtual hug and say you're doing amazing and you're not alone in this, and really help build community for them. So that's what I've done, and now I'm full-time Dementia Darling. 24/7 is my job.
That's great. You know, it's interesting you talk about that it can be for any caregiver. And, you know, we have the same thing. So for the last few years, we've been saying we're a dementia-focused law practice. And the way we came to that was that, you know, I help a lot of people with long-term care and finding the right long-term care, making sure that we're advocating for good care, finding ways to pay for it, all those types of things. Yeah. But the bottom line was, after a while, we realized that a good percentage, probably 75% or more of the families that we're helping were dealing with someone with dementia. And so once we realized that, we said, well, maybe we should say that and say that this is a lot of the people that are going to be struggling with this have a family member with dementia, and that complicates things, right?
Yes. And we don't see that in society enough. We don't see dementia out there. And so that means the world that you guys were able to tap into that and see the need. And now you make people feel seen by that. And I just appreciate you because, like you said, it's such a difficult journey to navigate. I mean, aging is difficult to navigate in general. Being a human is difficult to navigate in general. Now let's throw on top dementia, right? And all that comes with that. So yes, having supportive professionals that really truly understand the struggle is a game changer during the journey.
I really appreciate the education and, you know, the way that you do it, where you're getting out into social media and you're getting, you know, kind of the message out. This is very difficult for families to navigate. So if, you know, a lot of the caregivers, I'm sure that you work with are family caregivers. So of course there's going to be some paid professional caregivers, but a lot of them are the family caregivers. And this is so strange for them because the person that they're caregiving for, you know, their dad or their mom or their spouse or their grandparent or whatever. And sometimes it's really hard to separate the previous relationship from this new relationship, and just supporting them and educating them about how, you know, the best way to deal with different behaviors, different, you know, things that come up. That I think is great. And I love how you do it, that you're getting out. It's not just you have to go to this lecture in some lecture hall. You're getting out to real folks and real people and getting this information out.
We don't have time for that, right? We don't have time to go sit in a day training and find respite for our loved one and get there and all the things or whatever. Yes, I try to make it really digestible, and it's confusing for me, and I've been in it for 12 years and have a Master of Science degree focused in it, and it still is hard, and I'm still learning every day. It is a completely new world, specifically dealing with dementia, and people need that support, and we don't know until we know. So if you can, you know, watch a TikTok for 30 seconds once a day and learn something that could really, you know, help you in your day-to-day life caring for someone, man, that's a win. So yeah.
And you know, lawyers are known for being too wordy and using big words and talking too long and all that. And that's something that we've had to learn. So we have a TikTok page that we, you know, has gone viral a few times. And what we learned was you got to get right to the point. You really have to get information out there in an entertaining but short, easy to understand way. And that's what you do with the dementia education, which is great.
I'll tell you, though, it's very difficult for me. And you're right. And that's actually how you should communicate in dementia care too.
Right.
You keep it really concise and to the point and clear, less words the better. And I'm someone who, I always joke, I said my elders hated me because I was too loud, I talk too fast, and I do all the words. So they're, they're like, oh my gosh, get this girl away from me. So I have to be very conscious of, and intentional when I am, doing that.
Well, and I was reading about this the other day, and I'll see if you agree with that. A lot of the words, so if someone is experiencing dementia, and a lot of times the caregiver of the family or even the professional might be trying to communicate something with them. And what I was reading in my personal experiences, they might not be able to remember those words, but they can remember sort of the feeling they had when you had those words. So if you're confusing them or overwhelming them, that's the feeling they have. If you get to the point of the issue and dealing with it in a way that they can understand sort of the emotions of the situation, I think that is a much more effective communication.
You are spot on. They will take whatever we bring, they take that on, right? So you have to really go into it with the right energy. And I say to caregivers, you're allowed to be in a place where you don't think you should be around them at that moment. You're allowed to, step away and take a breath, because that is fair. You are human and you can't always be on and perfect and all the things and happy and woohoo, we're going potty. We can't always do that. And it's hard because it does make or break a situation. Dementia care, as you were saying, feeding off their energy, they might not remember your name, but they'll remember how you make them feel. And they will, if you, it's so hard when someone has like a negative, experience with someone, and that just sticks with them. And then they kind of become scared of that person. That can happen a lot in professional care, and things like that. So yes, it's very important.
So I'd like to know, I know a little bit because I've done my research and I've been following you for a bit now, but I'd like our listeners to know a little bit more about you and how did you get into this? What was your own personal experience? Things like that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, so you'll like this. So my dad is actually a real estate, and so he was a real estate lawyer and then a business law and ethics professor his whole career, UNLV and Penn State. And so that was my life. So when you said, yes, lawyers like to use big words, I'm like, yeah, I grew up in a home like that. So, but why I say that is I remember, so my grandmother was living with dementia, my dad's mom, and she unfortunately passed away from dementia when I was 13. So please keep in mind, I was young, didn't know what was going on. I was like, what is going on with grandma? She's acting so strange, just no education around it. But I could see my dad through those years as her main family caregiver, who is a lawyer, who is a smart guy, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to navigate the system. It is not easy for anyone. And I just talked with a doctor. She's a gerontologist. And she's like, now that it's my dad, like gero physician, sorry, she's full blown doctor in this. And she's like, now that it's my dad, everything's gone out the window. So that's another thing too. It's hard when it's your family. Right. But
absolutely
I watched, right. And so I watched him navigate this, and he did an amazing job, but it was really hard. He was on his own. He's doing this. And I'm just so glad to see that there are things available now and there's more talking about it. Still such a long way to go, but I didn't ever understand. I just know it was very stressful for my father. It was a hard time for my dad, and it definitely was affecting the family, watching my grandma progress. And her birthday was on Christmas Day. So, it's like every Christmas, during my teenage years, it was like watching her kind of just progress into this disease and not being able to engage with us on, the big holiday and her birthday. And I just remember that so vividly, but I'm so grateful for the time we had with her and what I learned through it. But that always stuck with me. And I was able to go to a college that had a program in gerontology, the study of aging. So I was like, sign me up. So I have my bachelor and master's degrees focused in gerontology, the study of aging, and family studies as a whole, and just the progression of being a human across the lifespan. And I just fell in love during my time in my internships. I started and I stayed there my whole college career at an intergenerational adult daycare center. So there was little kids, preschool, and then the elders with dementia mainly in the other end. And we would meet twice a day for snacks. And it was just it filled your soul, and that
Yeah.
solidified my passion. And then I, went through and worked in senior living, worked in nonprofit. I ended during COVID in as a director of an adult daycare center out here in Vegas where I live, and ended up getting really burnt out. And
Yeah.
so I switched over to the age tech world. So now I'm in kind of this, I went to the age tech engagement kind of sector of senior living, and finding really cool tech that keeps people happy and gives them, fun things to do. And through that time, I've really learned a lot about the different things that are being made for people living with dementia, the types of play that are available for people living with dementia. Like a fun fact, there's like 22 different types of play that you and I can enjoy in life, but people living with dementia can only experience about 3 types of play. So it's really, learning how to meet your person where they're at. But yeah, all through this time doing Dementia Darling and just trying to build up a safe place and resources and all the things. That was really long, but I,
No,
I tried
yeah.
to just keep learning and share all that I've learned along the way with caregivers, because every single day there's new people coming on this journey. We have over
Absolutely.
53 million family caregivers, unpaid caregivers in the U.S.
Wow. Yeah, no, and it's interesting the dynamics of what's coming along, and this is something that's not going to go away. And I don't think that we've done a very good job of preparing families for this stage of
Not at all.
one of the things I always say, and this is going to sound depressing, but it's just real, and I like people to just acknowledge it. So there's 3 possible futures. You're going to either, live a really long life and never really have any serious illness and then die peacefully in your sleep. And that does happen, but it's very rare.
Yep.
Option 2 is you could die young, and that's not so good. And option 3 is you're probably going to have some period of time before you die that you're going to be dependent on other people. And we just don't prepare for that time period. And families don't wrap their head around that idea. And it's something that I think that, I guess previous generations didn't have to deal with this much because people died younger, things like that. But I really think that, there's so much about, preparing for different stages in your life, preparing for having children, preparing for getting married, preparing for retiring. And then we have this important last stage of life that everybody just kind of looks right through and imagines it doesn't exist. And so I really, what you're doing and educating folks about the reality of this, tell us a little bit more of how people might be able to engage with Dementia Darling. There's different resources through social media, but what else can they do to engage?
Well, I'm definitely coolest on Instagram, and that's where I post the most, but at Dementia Darling on there, and then, Facebook, TikTok, all the things, LinkedIn. But yeah, I have dementiadarling.com, and I try to, put up resources. And then if you want to join my mailing list on there, I send out, resources and different things that I learn about. And I try to share as much as possible everything that's out there for caregivers, all the free things, all the amazing resources and companies and people that are popping up. So yeah, my website for sure. And I also have a podcast called Gather Darlings with my amazing bestie that's also in the aging industry and is amazing at what she does. Yeah, and it's going to be fun. Definitely follow. I'm heading next month for a month away in Europe for work and doing some international speaking and spending the day at the first ever dementia village, the Hagevik. Right outside of Amsterdam. It's in Weeps, Netherlands, and I have a day study there, and we're podcasting live from there.
Very nice.
Definitely follow along. We want to bring back Virgin as 4 of us professionals and talk about how we can recreate it here or not, or what's the possibilities.
I want you to talk a little bit more about that. I'm actually also going to the Dementia Village in Amsterdam next May. And I'm really excited about it. So tell our listeners a little bit more about that, because it's a really interesting concept.
I'm so glad you're going. This is a dream of mine. I've been studying it since I was 19, and I can't believe I get to go. So the Dementia Village Hagevik, which I have learned since I have gotten ready to go over there, is that they don't like being called a village. They actually don't want to be called a village. And so that's something we're going to learn more about and how to maybe change the vocabulary in the US. But a US publication dubbed them that, and it stuck, and they didn't have any say in it. So they
Okay.
want to be Hagevik. That's it. It doesn't mean anything, but they're
Okay.
Hagevik. So that was something new to me. And they are a place where it's literally a community for people living with dementia to live in, where it's their own town so they can live independently and autonomously. But the people in the town are all caregivers. So it's these professional caregivers around. They're there, for any help that is needed, but people actually get to go outside and go to the market and do things for themselves and have that independence. And I did see a stat, and I want to look more into it, but someone said this to me, and I was like, what? They said they did a study, and like it's people living at Hagevik lived 5 times longer or something.
Right.
I don't know. So I need to look more into it, but it's something to say about independence, having autonomy as long as possible in your progression. And it's about quality of life. And
Right.
I think that is the most incredible vision for what it should be for people. But there's a reason why we don't see it anywhere else. So what is that? So I will
Right.
hopefully find that out.
Yeah, no, very interesting. We had a guest on the podcast a few months ago that they're part of an organization that does therapies for people with neurodegenerative disorders, including dementia. And his thought and something that he expressed was a lot of families, when they get this diagnosis of dementia, they kind of cocoon and they just kind of
Yes.
hide in the house, and then they're not getting those services. And he was expressing how there are a number of things to make life better, make life more livable for both the person with dementia and the family. And a lot of families just kind of close in, and that he was saying the same thing as you, that it actually probably shortens their life, and the shorter period of life is less livable. Meaning it's, when we can have more things that can make it easier and make it easier for the family, not only can it extend their life, but it can extend their life in a much more enjoyable fashion, both for the person and their family.
Absolutely. Something, an example of this, and just on a really specific level, and just to go deeper into that, when we do things for people, just if they're aging, living with dementia, whatever, we do things for them before they need help with those things.
Yes.
We take away those abilities from them. So, for example, I worked in a senior living community where we were so short staffed, surprise, surprise. And we couldn't walk people, I was in activities. I watched this, not that I'm like not taking blame or anything, but this is how it was. And we would see people be put in wheelchairs instead of taking the time to walk them to dinner. And then eventually they lost the ability to walk faster because we didn't give them the opportunity to walk. So not giving people the opportunity to do things actually takes away their autonomy. So helpful for caregivers, support that independence. That's less for you to do at this moment. We want to support independence. If you have to cue them, start the process, that's fine, but don't take away everything. Start with verbal cueing before you go into physical cueing. All those types of things help.
Yeah. That's a good tip. Actually, I'm going to ask you to give us a few more tips. So, for example, a family that, we see this all the time, whether it's a parent or a spouse, but sometimes it's a matter. Well, I'll give you 2 examples and we'll take them one at a time. One is, George is just being stubborn, or Alice has, she's just, being ornery or whatever, and that because there's sort of all of the history of before they had dementia, that sometimes somebody really close is having a hard time accepting that this isn't just somebody being grumpy, right?
Yes. And that's why truly one of the acts of self-care for a caregiver is to learn about your loved one's disease, because the more we know, the better we can separate our loved one from what is happening. And understanding what is happening in their brain is a game changer for a caregiver, because it takes away that, are they doing this on purpose? Are they trying to piss me off? And it's like, they literally do not have that ability anymore. And that's so hard to understand. And it's heartbreaking, right? You don't want to understand that your loved one, their brain has deteriorated to a point where they cannot process things they have always been able to. So for example, if they're being stubborn, they don't want to eat. No, part of their brain probably has gotten to the point where they don't know what to do with a spoon. So
Right.
we want to put that spoon in the cereal, and that could be enough to cue them and and fill in that blank. But it's so hard because everyone's so different with their dementia, as we know.
Yeah.
Every person is unique. Every person's progression is different. Not everyone, will experience the same things. But it's that I see that all the time, especially in the beginning and mid stages when people just think they're doing it on purpose, and that makes it so hard. And then the guilt on the person, and it makes them want to isolate more because then they feel like they're doing stuff that's wrong too. But yeah, it's really about understanding the deficiencies in the brain that are happening, what parts of the brain are being affected. And unfortunately, the logical thinking and being able to process different things they have to do, different tasks. Confabulation is something where, your brain literally has like some memories, but then part of your brain doesn't. So it just makes up stuff and fills in the blanks. And so people say,
Exactly.
oh, they're lying. And it's like, no, because their brain told them that's correct. They're not trying to lie. They, like, for example, I had a gentleman that always thought he went to space every morning. But it was because his TV, like, he would always fall asleep to like the space channel, or I don't know what
Oh,
it was, but he would wake up with this space picture. And so it made sense. His brain put that together as, oh, he was in space. So something made sense there. So we have
right.
to look at the full picture and realize it is not on purpose. Their brain is trying the best that it can to make up for things.
Yeah, no, that's always interesting how the brain works. And I think there's a whole lot about the brain that we don't understand,
Oh,
but it's definitely
yes.
always trying to figure something out. Even when it doesn't have the resource, it doesn't have the short-term
Yeah,
memory or the resources to
it's
understand.
trying.
It's trying to figure out something to
It's
make sense
amazing.
of everything.
It's
So,
amazing what it can do.
yeah,
It really is fascinating. When you can like pull yourself apart from the like personal aspect, you're just like, this is fascinating. It
it
really
is.
is.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
can, it's heartbreaking, but it also can be fascinating if you really think about it from that kind of the distance there. But I have
Yeah.
another question that
Yeah.
might be helpful for families that's somewhat similar. But this is particularly, and it sometimes is between spouses, but often it's a child. And
Yeah.
I think most children, they grew up, they never thought or imagined that they would be making decisions for their parent without their parent
It's
agreeing to
heavy.
those decisions. And so here's what I see all the time: the child using logic to try to convince them of something, or just, and in my experience, often they can, right? We can talk about, okay, well, this is really important. You can't be driving anymore because it's unsafe. It could hurt other people. It could hurt you. Hey, we need to look at bringing in a caregiver or something
Yeah.
like that because, remember when you fell back a few months ago, and there's
Yeah.
lots of logic that we can use. And the problem I see with that is, two things. Number one is the ability to have that logical reasoning or executive decision
Yeah.
making. But the second thing, even if they can put that together and say, yeah, I see, I guess you're right, they're not going to remember that the next day. So there's this constant every day trying to convince them of something that is not going to stick. And so
Yeah.
how do you help families that are dealing with that need or that concern?
Oh, it's so hard. And one thing I just want to say about, yes, it doesn't always work. Sometimes, oh my gosh, yes, it does. That's awesome. If you can say the safety aspect and that works, great. It's so hard to, because like you said, you can't reason. Do never reason with someone living with dementia. You're never going to win. You're just going to leave frustrated because literally their brain cannot reason anymore. That's
Yeah.
not something that is available to them, like you said. So this is really hard. And that's where improv skills and your creativity comes into play. And unfortunately, there's really not a blanketed statement because I can say you leave a note out to remind them. Some people can't get to a point where they can't read, or they just won't read it. Or, I've also had, where families that have had to take out the engine so they
Yeah.
wouldn't go. And then the man figured out how to put the engine back in. He got
My
down the road.
goodness.
It was
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean, I was impressed, but it was very
Yeah.
scary. So, it's so hard because you have to know your person. And so I think, if there's a way that you can say, you have vouchers for Uber and we need to use them and you have that out or something, or you have, there has to be that consistent incentive that works for them. And then that needs to be very visible but unfortunately something that is hard to get around is that repetitiveness. It's usually coming from part of them that needs control and they don't have control. So you can't really redirect it. Sometimes you honestly have to wait it out until it is forgotten about. I don't have like a foolproof thing for that because it's just so hard. But not having the keys visible, where they would hang, usually don't have those things readily visible. If you think maybe something's triggering that, to ask about the car, maybe they see the purse out or your coat out, put everything that's like travel things away. Put anything that might indicate you're going in the car away. So it's not a thought, hopefully, but it's so individual. It's so hard. But the repetitiveness, I wish there was like a good tip, but finding the main source of where that's coming from, and we would know in this, it's not having their car. So trying to, replace it with something. We can't replace it with, another vehicle, but something else to focus on that they care about can be a nice replacement. But it's so hard.
It is hard. And one of the things I think that's hard for the children is sometimes you just have to make a decision, like the car's not going to be at the house, or make decisions of we're going to have a caregiver, or we're going to look at a care setting that is safe, and that there is no convincing dad that this is the right choice or convincing mom that this is the right choice, because you might be able to do it, but it won't stick necessarily. And so sometimes the kids have to have that uncomfortable thing of, we're going to have to make a decision because we're never going to be able to convince dad every day that he shouldn't be driving. So the decision is we're going to remove the car from the house. It's not going to be there. It's not an option, those types of things.
I say all the time, you're going to have to be the bad guy. And when you can let someone else be the bad guy, like the lawyer, like the DMV person, whoever, the doctor, get them in on it. Because the caregiver, takes the brunt of everything. You know what? At the end of the day, I'd rather my mom hate me for a little bit than her hit someone in the car. So you have to be the bad guy. It doesn't make you the bad guy. It actually makes you the good guy, but you're the bad guy in their eyes. But you're the good guy keeping them safe. And I'm never like saying they're the same at all. Parents and, taking care of children, it's not the same at all. But just like when my parents didn't let me go to that dangerous party when I was a teenager and I was pissed off about it. But it was, later on, I'm so glad I didn't go because the cops came and I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? Like we need to think about, they would do that for us. So we need to do that for them because they literally cannot make that decision safely anymore.
So, one of the things that partly through COVID, but partly just how things have developed, there's so much more opportunity to get good information and get resources. So, it's nice to have a local support group or, things like that. But it's nice to have, like Dementia Darling and things like that, where you can get information. And like you said, you're going to be over in Europe doing some teaching and such. And the nice thing is you don't have to get all of your resources locally. So there's such great information. There's great people in this industry that are trying to help folks and just have even just sort of society understand this a little bit better. And now I think there's an even more opportunity since COVID of realizing that just because you're in Nevada and we're here in Michigan, your advice is still as good as ours.
Yeah, no, it blows my mind. I see where people are from on my website, and like yesterday, India, Africa, just everywhere. And it's like dementia doesn't discriminate. I have celebrities asking me the same questions in my DMs. Everyone's seeking help. And I really, truly learn the most from following family caregivers. There are so many amazing family caregivers showing day-to-day life in real raw form on social media, and they're incredible. Highly recommend finding people. And like you said, there's so many great support groups. And you can find, a lot of people say, oh, I don't like support groups. I don't see myself in them. find a specific support group. There's the Hilarity for Charity, Seth Rogen and his wife have. I work with them and they're incredible. And they have specific,
Thanks.
millennial support groups, male caregiver support groups, Black caregiver support groups. I mean, the best. And you can find your people. Do not give up. I know it's hard in another job you have to do, but it's worth every second.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. It's interesting you talk about the different people that follow your website and follow your things. I think when we were looking at our statistics of who's downloading our podcast, Advice from Your Advocates, the second biggest country was Germany, and we're not quite sure why, but behind the United States, Germany is the second. We're very popular in Germany.
So interesting.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. I know the biggest city after LA for me that follows me is Lagos.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
I'm like, I hope I'm saying it right, but I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's random. So yeah, you never know. You never know who you're helping.
Well, Carrie, this has been great to talk to you. You have some really great options, and I really like the short education opportunities and getting it out to people in ways that are non-threatening and that they don't have to commit to more than a couple minutes. So I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you. Same to you. We need more elder law attorneys. We need more elder law specifics. I mean, people are so lost out there and get taken advantage of every day. Being able to find people that have this expertise and that actually care about the specific group is really special. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's very true. It's one of those things where there's lots of attorneys. Actually, it's a pretty small group of attorneys that even do anything related to long-term care and Medicaid and veterans benefits and things like that. But the standard is the lawyers are just doing the legal part or helping with the financial part or things like that. And the reality when you get into this is there's more to it. There's more, there's a need for advocacy. There's a need for assistance to the maze of long-term care, of how to get to dementia care. And so that's where there's a much smaller group of us that look at it as more of a holistic practice where we're looking at not just the money, not just the legal documents, but also, looking at the big picture and just trying to get the best results, best family and quality of life that you can get. So
we need more of you. I mean, so many people don't know where to turn. I'm sure, as you know, they turn to someone or find someone too late sometimes with certain things with dementia care that can make it really, really, really difficult. And it's, people are going through this is often the hardest time of their lives. And so to find professionals along the journey that have just see you is huge. Yeah. And cater to that. Yeah.
Final thoughts or final tips you want to give our listeners?
We kind of touched on it with the energy a little bit, but meet your people where they are. Meet your loved ones where they are. I know it's easier said than done, but I like to just say this because it's helped a lot of people. I often have, family members, let's say we often see daughters caring for parents, right? And let's say I often hear, a daughter say, oh, my mom thinks I'm her mom now.
Right.
Or I'm her sister or her grandma. And that's really hard. Heck yeah, that's hard. Valid. Yeah. That is heartbreaking. But I want you to think of it like this. Wow. Your mom is in a place in her head, first off, where you're not born yet, just so you know. So that's like, first off, like she's reverted back in her brain to where maybe she lives at home and she just sees her sister and her mom now, or maybe she lives with grandma, what have it be, but you weren't in that timeline yet. So one, don't take it personally in that sense, if you can look at it that way. And then two, how cool is it that you're her safe space now, that she sees you as that loved one from that other time period?
Right.
How cool that you're her safe space, that now you're her mom. She loves her mom and she's now seeing you as that loved one. And so to look at it in that way and to be like, wow, I'm still her person, even though I might not be called the same name. I'm still that person she sees as her safety net. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And it's just with the fact of seeing, oh, I wasn't even part of that timeline for her yet, is a really big aha for people, I think, too, in the sense that it's not that she forgot you necessarily. She's literally back in time. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a whole different kind of way to look at that. So I like to leave people with that kind of just to think about. but also know that you're valid and that this is the hardest thing ever. And please give yourself grace when guilt comes on, when, you know, the
Right.
grief is too rough, when you feel like you're hitting your burnout point. Please, please care for yourself, because if something happens to you, you know, what's going to happen to the people that you care for too. So we have to make sure we're caring for yourself. That is an act of love to the people you're caring for when you care for yourself.
Absolutely. Very well said. Well, thank you, Carrie from Dementia Darling.
Thank
and
you.
This has been Advice from Your Advocates. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to know when we have future ones, feel free to subscribe to Advice from Your Advocates on any of the podcast places that you listen to a podcast, or you can go to our website at mannorlawgroup.com.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, visit mannorlawgroup.com.